what is very important as we close this month or come to the close of this month is that um, we walk away with the realization, a very conscious realization. And I'll continue to switch between Urdu and English just for the benefit of Stephen, but also for everyone else. So let me know if that's okay. So I want to make sure that Stephen is able to understand the whole thing, and then everyone else, please let me know. I will switch between English and Urdu just to make sure everybody's comfortable. So as we come to the close of this month, what is very critical is to sit down, pause, realize, and take stock of how has this month changed us for the rest of the year to come, for the rest of our lives, inshallah, and more specifically for the rest of the year to come. Because when you think about it, all of the ibadat, all of the worship, all of the mandatory faraiz जिसे हम कहते हैं ना, जो अल्लाह ताला ने जो फराइज रखे हैं, नमाज, रोजा, हज, zakat, all of the obligatory pillars of Islam, right, which is prayer, which is fasting, which is hajj, all of these, they come with a certain cadence. उनमें एक regularity है. So fasting is once a year, hajj is at least once in a lifetime, prayers or mandatory obligatory prayers are 5 times a day, or canonical prayers are 5 times a day. So the reason for this frequency, very obviously, is to continue so that these pillars continue to act as reinforcements. So the 5 daily prayers are a reinforcement every day. The Hajj is such a massive life-transforming event that it is once done, at least once in life. I mean, once in life is mandatory for whoever meets certain conditions, financially, physically, etc. But it is such a life-transformative event that one event per life is one's life is fine. And then fasting happens once a year. Now, what is important between when we look at these mandatory pillars of Islam is that when we go from one to the other, we look at what is our spiritual or mental state between those two events. So take a concrete example. When we're looking at 5 daily prayers, each prayer is a reinforcement. Fajr is a reinforcement up until Zuhr. Zuhr is a reinforcement up until Asr, and so on. Now, as a salik, as a traveler, as on the spiritual path, seeking Allah Ta'ala, seeking God, what is critical is that we are conscious of how our state evolves between these two moments. So between the first prayer and the second prayer, between Fajr and Zuhr, between Zuhr and Asr, between Asr and Maghrib, between Maghrib and Isha, what is our state in between? Because that is what we need to guard, because that is the whole function of that daily reinforcement. Similarly, मैं रोजे पे आता हूँ, which is sort of the main point that I want to emphasize today with regards to fasting. जब मैं रोजे पे आता हूँ, आपकी fasting पे आता हूँ, तो fasting maybe it's once a year, but what we need to take into account is how is our condition changing post Ramadan up until the next Ramadan. And so this annual training program that we go through, this 30-day annual training program that Allah Ta'ala has prescribed for us, which includes 30 days, more or less, of fasting, of recitation of the Qur'an, of remembrance, of zikr, of different. So all of this is an exercise that is meant to bring some permanent elevation, spiritual elevation. एक permanent हमारी जिंदगी में तब्दीली की जरूरत है पोस्ट रमजान. वो थोड़ी हो ज्यादा हो, लेकिन एक permanent बेहतरी की तरफ एक चेंज आए. तो जैसे हम सारे अपना ये रमज़ान ख़त्म कर रहे हैं, तो मेरी दरख्वास्त ये होगी कि जो इसको संभालने का, इसको वसूल करने का तरीका है ना, हज़रत यूज्ड टू से the way of actually just receiving the blessings of Ramadan is to, or the way of preserving them, or to avoid losing all the blessings that we've had, we have, we have been blessed with during this month, is to show constancy, is to show istaqamat, is to show कि हम उसमें किस दर्जे तक, हाँ अब ये जाहिर बात है कि उस दर्जे की इबादत नहीं हो पाती रमज़ान के बाद जिस दर्जे की रमज़ान में तौफीक मिलती है, राइट? सो it's understood that post Ramadan the intensity of worship goes down, right? So one is not fasting every day, one is not, so that kind of intensity, the rhythm, the cadence of Ramadan, of course, does not sustain. It's hard to sustain that, and it's not intended that one sustains the same level of intensity post Ramadan. But what I'm talking about is a permanent change in our attitudes, in how we approach our spiritual life, in how we approach our frame of mind, in how we approach, uh, how we think about this journey towards Allah Ta'ala. वो जो एक नजरम, एक देखने के तरीके में, एक देखने के जाविये में जो तब्दीली है ना, वो बड़ी ज़रूरी है। तो इंशाअल्लाह जब ये आखिरी अब ताक रातें हैं, आखिरी अशरे की रातें हैं, इंशाअल्लाह ख़त्म हो जाती हैं, पोस्ट रमज़ान हम निकलते हैं, तो बड़ा कॉन्शियसली, ऑल आई वांट टू से इज बड़ा कॉन्शियसली, जस्ट वेरी वेरी कॉन्शियसली try to look back and preserve as much as you gained in this month. क्योंकि एकदम रमज़ान के बाद there's some sort of an anti-climax that happens and people lose that completely. It's easy to lose um, that drive, so to speak, that one has during Ramadan. So all I'm requesting for is that as you reflect on the year beyond this month, try to uh, try to think of how do you preserve that intensity to some degree. वो जो जज्बा है, वो जो जुस्तजू है, वो जो अल्लाह ताला के साथ एक ताल्लुक का को सीख कर रहा है, उसको किस तरीके से उसके अंदर एक वो जो जोर है ना, वो पेडल से उठाना नहीं है पाँव, वो थोड़ा सा जोर जो है उसको कैसे इंसान बरकरार रखे, जो जो तौफीक मिली हुई है उसको बेशक कम दर्जे में, जैसे मैंने कहा है, वो तो उस इंटेंसिटी से तो हो सकता है मेंटेन करना पॉसिबल ना हो. So even though if you're doing it at a lower level of intensity, but how do you maintain that spirit of spiritual struggle, right? It's a spiritual struggle that we, inshallah, maintain post Ramadan. So that said, one just quick reminder for these last nights, firstly for myself and then for all of our friends, is that these are moments of, inshallah, great moments of dua. तो इसमें अल्लाह ताला के साथ जिस तरीके से भी आप अल्लाह ताला को पुकारें, ये बात याद रखिएगा, दुआ कुछ पढ़ने का नाम नहीं है. ये अल्फाज मैंने हज़रत डॉक्टर साहब से सुने हैं, ये मैंने अल्फाज Hazrat Pir Zulfikar Sahib se sune. I mean, I've heard these words from many, 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 many spiritual saints. Ke, dua is not about reading something or, asking Allah Ta'ala. It's not about reading a bunch of lines. It is to really sit down with all our heart and mind and be in the presence of Allah Ta'ala and to really ask Him from the bottom of our heart. It is the sincerity of the dua, it's not the language, it's not the words, it's the intensity with which you are present with Allah Ta'ala when you're asking for that thing. मैंने अभी हाल ही में हाल ही से मतलब है कि 4-5 महीने हो गए होंगे जब मैंने हज़रत खाकवानी साहब से अल्फाज सुने. हज़रत फरमाने लगे कि वो कुछ लम्हे होते हैं जब दुआ कबूल होती है, और वो अक्सर वो लम्हा होता है जब इंसान अल्लाह ताला के साथ उस लम्हे में अल्लाह के सिवा हर चीज़ से कट चुका होता है, और वो जो मोमेंट ऑफ प्रेजेंस में अल्लाह से मांगता है वो कबूल हो जाता है. right? So I'm translating it the same thing, that it's not about the the moments in which our du'as, our prayers get accepted are not are moments that are marked by this intense presence, intense feeling of presence with Allah Ta'ala, with God. And those moments of presence are just moments from the heart. They're not moments when one is necessarily reciting a few words or saying something from the tongue. Those are moments in which you are just there with Allah Ta'ala. तो इसलिए जो दुआ है ना uh, उसको superficially ना मांगी. That's my only request. You don't make dua superficially. And what I mean by that is you're reading words when your heart is not there. And that is the superficial dua. Recite it. I mean, there's no point repeating words when your heart is not there, right? So अपने आप को अल्लाह की मायत में बिठा के, अल्लाह की प्रेजेंस में बिठा के, जिस तरीके से आप मराकबे के लिए बैठते हैं, बैठ के अल्लाह ताला से दुनिया की खैरें भी मांगिए, आखिरत की खैरें भी मांगिए, और अल्लाह ताला के नामों से मांगिए. ये हज़रत पीरुल अफ़कार साहब रहमतुल्लाह अलैह, अल्लाह ताला उनके दर्जात बुलंद फरमाए, उनका ये ख़ास मामूल होता था. हज़रत जब एतकाफ़ फरमाते थे और आखिरी अशरे में दुआएं करात करात करवाते थे, तो हज़रत का एक ख़ास मामूल होता था कि वो अल्लाह ताला के नामों से अल्लाह ताला को पुकारते थे. और उनका एक ख़ास तरीका था कि वो या अल्लाह हो, या वहाब हो, या अल्लाह हो, या मुजीब हो, वो इस मतलब आप अल्लाह इस तरह पढ़ लें, या जिस तरह हजरत फरमाते थे या मुजीब हो, या अल्लाह, या वहाब हो, या अल्लाह, इस तरीके से पढ़ लें. लेकिन जो भी आप तरीका पकड़ें, अल्लाह ताला के नामों से अल्लाह ताला की आप अपनी दुआओं को मानना इज वेरी वेरी इट्स एन एस्टैब्लिश्ड वे. अल्लाह ताला के नामों के थ्रू दुआओं को मांगना. एंड सो Stephen, for your benefit, what I was saying was, I know you're, mashallah, you're like uh, you're truly, truly blessed. You're like, as we say in our tradition, that someone who enters Islam is like a newborn baby, whose entire, whatever mistakes one has committed in one's life, past life, are all completely erased. And the person is like a newborn child. So in some ways, I at least really envy you, because it's a great state to be in, a great state to be like a newborn child. And so all I was saying was that as you get to learn Allah Ta'ala's names and God's beautiful names, I mean, God has infinite names, but there are many that we know of from the Qur'an. And one of the ways of praying to Allah Ta'ala and asking Him for the blessings both in this world and the hereafter is through using His blessed names. And so, for instance, one of His names is Wahhab. Wahhab means somebody, and Wahhab is like all of these names have each one of them have a beauty to it. And Wahhab means somebody who loves to give immensely, right? Who just loves to give to his servants, loves to give them in abundance, and loves to give them things that they will not by themselves be able to get. So when you sit down in the presence of Allah Ta'ala and say, Ya Wahhab, or Ya Allah, O Wahhab, what you're really saying is, I cannot get this thing on my own. It's an acknowledgement of one's own helplessness, of one's own weakness, of one's own limitations, shortcomings as a human, and yet asking Allah Ta'ala, knowing that Allah Ta'ala is the one true God whose treasures, are infinite, who loves His servants, who loves giving to His servants, and who becomes happy and who becomes happy when His servants are then grateful and thankful to Him. So, Ya Wahhab, Ya Mujib, Ya Sami, Ya Jawad, Ya Manan. Like, these are all beautiful, beautiful names, and it's impossible to just gloss over them and give quick explanations. So that's something I will invite you all to do. There are many, many good books on Allah Ta'ala's names. There's a lot of literature on it. One of my favorites is a book by, again, My love for Imam Ghazali is a book by Imam Ghazali on Allah Ta'ala's names. It's a it's a beautiful book that has like a chapter on each of the names. So see if you can lay your hands on it. But otherwise, there's sufficiently material if you find something online that is credible, not just Google kind of stuff, but that is credible from credible sources. Use those and learn some of Allah Ta'ala's names, but use them in your dua. And the last thing before we start zikr is ask Allah Ta'ala both for this dunya and the hereafter. It is important to ask Allah Ta'ala for this dunya, but the niyyah, the intention that you should keep when you're asking for anything that you're asking for in this dunya is that dunya is you're going to use that dunya, that this world, the blessings of this world are a means to again getting closer to Allah Ta'ala. So we don't shy away from asking for blessings in this world, but we know that we're asking them not because they are a purpose unto themselves, but because we need them. We need them and we use them as a means, again, to get close to Allah Ta'ala. So for instance, if we get rizq, if we get food, right? We get a house, we have a spouse, we have children, we have some way of earning a livelihood. When we have these basic blessings that are essential to us and to us playing our role as humans on this planet, we use those as means to get to Allah Ta'ala, right? All of those are blessings and a way to get close to Allah Ta'ala. So for us, and so therefore, ask Allah, like I'm saying this because, एक ज़माने में सालिकीन को शुरू में अक्सर ऐसा होता है कि कभी कभी सालिक के दिल में ख्याल आता है कि शायद दुनिया मांगनी अल्लाह ताला से गुनाह है, या दुनिया मांगूंगा तो मुझे शर्म आएगी. गुनाह नहीं है, लेकिन एक शर्म आएगी, हया आती है कि मैं अल्लाह से दुनिया मांग रहा हूँ. It's sometimes, and it's a feeling of love कि मैं अल्लाह ताला से दुनिया क्यों मांगूं, मैं अल्लाह ताला से सिर्फ अल्लाह ताला को मांगूंगा. And that's a beautiful state to be in. But I realized later in my life that asking Allah Ta'ala for dunya is an acknowledgement of our weakness as humans, and therefore it's a beautiful thing, right? Because think about this point, right? I used to think that the great spiritual saints, Sayyida Rabia Basri, etc., will not ask Allah Ta'ala for dunya. But that's not what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has taught us. That's not what Allah Ta'ala has taught us. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. Right? It's Allah Ta'ala teaching us, right? So ask goodness in this life and ask for goodness in the hereafter. And of course, ask for immense nearness to Allah Ta'ala, and that Allah Ta'ala bless our hearts, open our hearts to His paths, give us the spiritual power to continue to persevere on this, inshallah, lifelong journey of continuing to get closer to Him.